With just weeks left before more than 70 New Mexico National Guard members hit the streets of Albuquerque, top law enforcement officials involved in planning the unusual deployment insisted it will not be a military occupation of New Mexico's largest city. The Trump administration is offering immigrants $1,000 in free airfare to voluntarily leave the United States, but immigration lawyers and advocates are warning that those who take the administration up on this offer may face long-term consequences if they ever try to return to the United States. And a research institute in New Mexico has won a lawsuit against the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department over violations of the Inspection of Public Records Act. From the Albuquerque Journal, this is the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. It's Thursday, May 8th, and I'll have more on those stories, plus a look at other headlines and the weather forecast on the other side of this break.
This episode is brought to you by the Kirtland Partnership Committee. For 30 years, we've been dedicated to supporting, growing, and preserving the Kirtland National Security Complex. We work tirelessly to enhance military readiness, foster community partnerships, improve quality of life, and promote economic development right here in New Mexico. Join us in our mission to ensure that Kirtland remains a cornerstone of national security and a key provider of quality jobs and investment for all of Greater Albuquerque. Together, we can make a powerful impact. Kirtland Partnership Committee, proudly shaping the future of our national security for 30 years.
With just a few weeks before more than 70 New Mexico National Guard members hit the streets of Albuquerque, top law enforcement officials involved in planning the unusual deployment insisted it will not be a military occupation of the state's largest city. With more on this, I'm now joined by the Journal's Capitol Bureau Chief Dan Boyd, who attended a press conference on the upcoming operation on Wednesday. Dan, thank you so much for joining me.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
So Dan, this upcoming National Guard deployment to Albuquerque, officially dubbed Operation Zia Shield, has drawn a lot of attention since it was announced a couple weeks ago. But for our listeners who may not be totally caught up on what's going on, can you give us a brief overview of what this operation will be?
Yes, so we've known about this for about a month now. Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham had issued an executive order kind of authorizing this deployment, and we found out, that it was requested by Albuquerque Police Chief Harold Medina. So we've kind of known that this was in the works, but as it's gone on and as the deployment date has gotten closer, we've found out more details. And today was a press conference with the Albuquerque Police Chief, the New Mexico State Police Chief, and also the director of the New Mexico National Guard, who's going to be involved with this mission. And they kind of laid out a little bit of, what the training has looked like, exactly the scope of this deployment. And we even got to see a little bit of the training going on and talk with a few of the Guards members who are going to be involved.
And Dan, as we touched on at the top of this interview, officials really emphasize that this is not a military occupation. And we learned through your reporting today that Guards members will not carry guns, wear fatigues, or even have the power to make arrests. So what exactly are they going to be doing?
Yeah, I think when we all first heard this a month or so ago, we kind of assumed that this was more of a military operation, but it's become clear that the idea is that there'll be kind of non-law enforcement duties, that they'll be helping out with securing crime scenes, filing paperwork, things like that, and at least the idea is then that will free up Albuquerque police officers to be on the front lines more and not having to be dealing with some of this kind of more bureaucratic issues. We'll see how that plays out a little bit in practice with the deployment, but we did get a little more clarity today on kind of the scope of, like as you said, that they will not be carrying guns. They will be carrying the pepper spray. They've gotten some training in kind of self-defense and use of force kind of issues just in case that situation should arise. And also today that we found out they'll be carrying Narcan in case they come across individuals who have overdosed on drugs. So kind of getting a little more of a sense of what this is going to look like, and also the understanding that this is what the mission is going to look like at first, but we'll see how it kind of evolves over as time goes on.
And the timing of this operation, Dan, really interesting because it comes off the heels of a 60-day legislative session where crime was really one of the targeted areas, and obviously the governor and lawmakers making it a priority. But as far as the reaction we're seeing from lawmakers, it's ranged from skepticism to outright concern.
Yeah, I think this caught some lawmakers by surprise, coming right after on the heels of the legislative session. And I did talk to Senator Mimi Stewart, who's the Senate President Pro Tem, and she said a lot of, she represents kind of a district that's right there in the International District or the war zone of Albuquerque. And she said a lot of her constituents are concerned. I think she said she's hopeful that it kind of works as Mayor Tim Keller and the governor intend this to work, but that there are concerns and some misgivings about it. So I think that there will be some community members who, I don't think this will be like a wildfire or flood response where people are welcoming necessarily the National Guard. There could be some people who are a little more resistant or kind of skeptical about having Guards members, in Albuquerque and involved in kind of day-to-day police type of work.
And Dan, do we know when we can expect to see these National Guardsmen on the streets?
So it sounds like for the most part, the deployment will begin kind of around Memorial Day weekend, kind of the 24th of May. So only a couple weeks out here. The question did come up how long it's going to last, and that's kind of not really defined. But the Adjutant General of the National Guard said he could see it going on for 6 months, which interestingly would mean kind of into November, which is when local elections are. So some interesting timing, whether that's a coincidence or not. I'm not sure, but it's not like this is only going to be a 1 month thing. I think they're committed to seeing this through for a number of months.
So this deployment's set to start in a couple of weeks, and it should be interesting to track as the rollout continues. Journal Capitol Bureau Chief Dan Boyd with the latest. Thank you so much, Dan.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate it.
The Trump administration has launched a controversial self-deportation program offering immigrants $1,000 in free airfare to leave the United States voluntarily. Promoted through a repurposed Border Patrol app called CBP Home, the program is presented as a humane and cost-effective alternative to detention and forced removal. Officials claim that those who take the offer may have an easier path to return legally in the future. However, immigration advocates and attorneys are warning immigrants that accepting the offer could severely harm their chances of ever returning to the United States legally. Key concerns center on those with pending immigration court cases. If such individuals leave the country, they may receive an absentia deportation order, triggering a 10-year bar on re-entry and complicating any future legal pathways. Advocates fear that the program is misleading, especially since promotional flyers have appeared in immigration courts, making it seem as if judges endorse the program.
Yeah, there's an app that you can download to your phone. It was actually created under the Biden administration to help immigrants keep track of their court cases and so forth. But you can sign up for this offer through that app.
My colleague Oliver Udebrook is a courts reporter for the Journal.
An immigration attorney that I spoke with, Sophia Genovese, she's with the New Mexico Immigrant Law Center. She said that flyers for this app have been turning up at immigration courts around the country, including El Paso, which is where all the New Mexico immigration cases are heard. And she considers it a conflict of interest because if the courts and the judges would appear to be advocating this use of this app, she believes that it creates the impression that immigrants cannot get a fair trial or get a fair hearing in their immigration cases.
Legal experts strongly urge immigrants to consult with an attorney or an accredited representative before deciding to self-deport. Critics say the initiative is part of Trump's broader push for mass deportation, which has been a campaign promise he has so far struggled to achieve. While the administration presents the program as optional and benevolent, immigration attorneys argue that its consequences are potentially severe and irreversible. A research institute in New Mexico has won a lawsuit against the New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department over violations of the Inspection of Public Records Act.
The Southwest Public Policy Institute, also known as Sippy, is a think tank in New Mexico, and they do a lot of research and data-driven stuff on policies. So
my colleague Nikayla McClellan is a reporter for the Journal.
They were trying to get a research study going about Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's EV mandate, which basically says that a certain percentage of vehicles in New Mexico have to be electric-based by a certain year. And they wanted to do a research study that basically said, here are the effects of that and why we might need to readjust the mandate to be a little bit more New Mexico-focused.
The institute aimed to analyze how the policy might disproportionately affect low-income and minority residents. The New Mexico Taxation and Revenue Department denied the request, prompting Sippy to take legal action. Despite a failed settlement conference, the case proceeded to a one-day trial in January, where the judge ruled in favor of Sippy. The court ordered the Taxation and Revenue Department to release the data and pay over $30,000 in legal fees. Sippy President Patrick Berner said the department's refusal stemmed more from a misunderstanding of legal obligations than an attempt to hide information. He did, however, express disappointment over the lack of additional statutory damages, which might have deterred future non-compliance. After gaining access to the data, Sippy discovered major inconsistencies, such as vehicles reportedly having 599 cylinders, far beyond any real-world possibility. Sippy plans to publish a consumer-oriented reports on who owns electric vehicles in the state and who is likely to be negatively impacted by the zero-emission policy. In other headlines from the newsroom, Drew Lovelace, the former acting director of New Mexico's Office of Broadband Access and Expansion, has returned to his previous role as operations manager after Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's administration decided to pursue a new direction for the office's leadership. Department of Information Technology Secretary Manny Barreras is temporarily filling the acting director role. The leadership change follows the legislature's rejection of a $70 million request aimed at expanding satellite internet to about 95,000 underserved households. Lovelace had advocated for using state funds to subsidize satellite internet, likely through Elon Musk's Starlink, especially for residents ineligible for federal programs. Despite progress and increased funding since the office's creation in 2021, New Mexico still lags behind most states in broadband access. However, lawmakers did approve changes this session to improve broadband funding for public schools. And Twins Academy Incorporated, a bilingual family-owned childcare business in Albuquerque, has been named the 2024 New Mexico Family-Owned Small Business of the Year by the U.S. Small Business Administration. Founded in 2018 by the mother and daughter duo of Erica Estrada Cazada and Norma Estrada, the business grew from a home-based operation to 4 centers serving over 150 families and employing more than 30 staff. Inspired by their own childcare challenges and supported by C&M's Crianza Accelerator program, they turned their shared passion for early education into a thriving venture. Their centers serve children aged 6 weeks to 12 years old, focusing on bilingual development and community impact. A 5th location is in the works, and the SBA award recognizes their resilience, innovation, and dedication to underserved neighborhoods. If you like hearing all of the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal here on the Leading News, consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Albuquerque Journal. You can check our show notes for a discount code on a digital subscription and keep up with all the latest news from New Mexico's leading news source. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast, there is a slight chance of showers today, mostly sunny with a high near 72. As for this evening, mostly clear skies are expected with a low around 43. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. That's the Leading News. I'm Gino Gutierrez. We'll be back tomorrow.